Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Vice President of Strategy for the Internet of Things at IBM, John Thompson.
Good afternoon. Thank you for that round of applause. I haven't actually said anything yet, and you're already rewarding me. That's good. I can always use the positive reinforcement. I'd like to start with a very simple question for everyone here. Why bother listening to me? At my count, I'm the 9th keynote. If you're not up to here with keynotes, I don't know, right? No offense to the keynotes that are coming tomorrow. Many times when people talk about the IoT, everyone is talking past each other. Quite frankly, if you remember your Sunday school, sometimes these discussions can sound like a Tower of Babel. That's what people are doing. They're all speaking different languages. They're all talking different dimensions. One of the nice things about the reference model is it starts to clarify the discussions that when people are running around talking about Zigbee versus Z-Wave, that's a really important discussion, but that's really low in the reference model. Where are we going to actually provide value to ourselves and to our clients is much higher up in the model, up in analytics and business processes. But we've got to get out of the Tower of Babel. We've got to take the complexity and turn it into some clarity. And that's what I'm going to try and do for you today. I'm going to try and share with you some things that unpack the key messages and get down to the core, right? Not big, 9,000-foot ideas, but simple, small, practical ideas and ways to approach the situation. I'm going to do two basic things here today. First, I'm going to give you a brief history of some of the work that we've done in Smarter Planet. This is just to show you that we've got some background here, and I want to share some of the things that we've learned and the customers we've worked with. The major part of what I'm going to talk about today, though, is based on that experience, we've pulled out three major themes, three very important themes in the IoT. And I'm going to illustrate all three of those themes. I think everyone can remember three things, and hopefully this will be very useful to you. And at the end, I'm going to end with a bit of a challenge for you that's actually a challenge for me, but I'm going to make it a challenge for you as well. If you want to know the future, you have to know something of the past. Back in 2008, IBM launched a Smarter Planet initiative. We had our CEO, Sam Palmisano, at the time go out and say, we think that we see three things happening in the future. We see the world becoming much more instrumented. The kind of measurements that cost thousands of dollars to take in the year 2000 and cost hundreds of dollars to take in 2005, we saw the cost of that going down. Now the smartphones that you're all carrying around in this room, you have so much instrumentation, people aren't even using it. That instrumentation is completely worthless, however, if you can't communicate it somewhere. And what have we seen in the last 5 to 10 years? We've seen communication become ubiquitous, but more importantly than becoming ubiquitous, it's become dirt cheap. It's a commodity. People can send information around. Remember the days when you used to have to manage how many hours you had on your voice plan on your cell phone and things like that, because what you were trying to do is trying to stay under caps? Now it's a completely different world, and interconnection is very, very cheap. The other eye that we had in our three eyes is we said the world is going to become intelligent. Look around us. You've seen the examples today of the intelligence. We all know from a consumer point of view. I was interested to hear the speaker before me talk about ads being served based on his searches and things. We call that smarter commerce, but it's a very important thing. And it's clearly the world is intelligent. So when we sat back in 2008 and we thought about the future and we came up with the three I's, the instrumentation, the interconnection, and the intelligence, I leave it up to you. Was that fulfilled? Look around you. Was that prophecy fulfilled in the hearing and seeing that you have today? Now, some of you will know the motto of IBM is think. I'm actually the youngest old IBMer in IBM. When my mentor retired, he bequeathed me his Think plaque, and I proudly have it up on the side of my office so that I look at it every day when I come in. Thinking is really important. I would never be against thinking, but it's not as important as doing. And what you need to follow through after the thinking is with the doing. So let me show you some of the experiences that we've had that I think will ring true with you here. From an analytics point of view, one of the most complicated machines with rotational motion around is a jet engine. Right? There are lots of simple electric motors and things, but you think of a machine with rotational motion, the temperature extremes, the violence of the explosion, the controlled combustion inside a jet engine. We've actually gone out with Pratt & Whitney. They know a lot more about jet engines than we do. We have some great analytics software and some super data scientists to go work with them. We've taken a look at over 400 pieces of data that stream off that jet engine. You know what? There's only about 10 of them that really matter for maintenance. I won't tell you which 10 because Pratt & Whitney is my customer. But I'm all in favor as a frequent flyer of all 400 pieces going to the avionics bay so the pilots can fly the plane, right? All of you that are going home today, you're going to be, or tomorrow or the next day, you'll be happy to have it going to the cockpit. But at the same time, from a maintenance point of view, I don't have to collect all that data. And it turns out that I can collect it at certain sampling intervals. And so you really control the amount of data. When I hear people talking about petabytes and exabytes and things of data, they're clearly not thinking about the filtering and sampling that needs to go on during this analytical process. And, oh, by the way, in the Pratt example, it's one thing to look at the condition monitoring of the engine, but then you also can say to yourself, I'm going to take these engines and compute a health score, and these engines and compute a health score, and these other engines and compute a health score, and that helps you with your predictive maintenance. I'm a geek at heart, as you might be able to tell. I loved the Rio Tinto presentation yesterday, and I love the God's eye view of the mine and things like that. It turns out there are other ways that you use geospatial information. Yes, there's a single windmill, and wind power and renewable energy is a very important trend to have going forward. But it turns out that all those windmills, they don't exist on a flat floor like you're all sitting on, or a flat stage like I'm standing on. They exist on a three-dimensional surface. And the winds flowing through those valleys are very, very complicated. It turns out it takes some very sophisticated analytics to not just calculate all of that, but to calculate it in a way that it's actionable. Anyone can set up a computation that takes a week to run, but at the end of the week, your competitor's already moved faster. What you need to do is be able to look at the analytics and say, I'm going to set up that computation in a way that preserves the accuracy, but at the same time gives you information, a decision when you can act on it. Finally, in my three examples, I picked out BART. So I've got planes and power generation and rail here. We help BART in terms of maintenance of the cars and the locomotives. How do you get the train to the place on time? How do you make sure it's clean? How do you make sure it's safe? When the wheels start to go out of round, what's your analytics to see that and make sure those get replaced in time? So through our Smarter Planet experience, we've looked at a bunch of different things here, and we've worked with hundreds and thousands of customers. What I'd like to do is I'd like to give you three things that you can take away that are the benefit of the experience that we've had. Three things. And we start with, why is it only three things? Well, we need to make things as simple as possible. The first point is this. The Internet of Things is a wonderful term, and it's a terrible term. It's a wonderful term because we do believe, based on our experience, about 70% of the technology in the Internet of Things is frankly not new. It's reuse and reapplication of technologies that we have in other places. And that's a good thing. The problem is it lulls you into a sense of false security. And if you ignore the 30% that's unique, you will fail, and you deserve to fail. Right? When you're looking at a failed project in the IoT, you have to ask yourself, did I fail to take enough appreciation of what the 30% is? And I find the 30% breaks down into four pieces. From an internet perspective, these devices we're dealing with are not typical internet devices. They're physical devices. They live in harsh environments, particularly in an industrial area. One of the consumer companies was meeting with me this morning, and they said, gee, all the speakers are talking about industrial, applications. Are there any consumer applications of this as well? Absolutely there are, and in some of our houses are pretty harsh environments with all the kids running around and things like that too. But these are different devices, and you can't just take a pump, no matter how good it is, or a robot, or an HVAC system, and graft some internet technology on the top. That's a recipe for disaster. Then you get yourself in the paper like you saw in January of this year, where people came up with a spamming refrigerator because someone had just grafted internet technology on top of a perfectly good refrigerator without thinking through all the implications of having that refrigerator sit on the internet. The second thing that's different is protocols. I opened with an analogy of the Tower of Babel, and those of you that went to Sunday school, you know that the Tower of Babel is not just a true Bible story. In some ways, it's God's curse on the IoT. Look around us. We have more protocols, we have more different things that people speak, but the fact of the matter is, these devices have service lives that are measured in decades. We could all get together this afternoon in some reference architecture meeting or something. We could all decide to speak Esperanto as our worldwide language. No, all our natural languages are still going to be around. We could decide on a standard for the IoT. All the devices are still going to be out there. My brother-in-law worked for a hydro plant up on the Canadian border. They have transformers there that were built in the 1950s that have never failed. And people keep coming in trying to sell them new transformers, and they say, why? They haven't failed yet. So we're going to have to live with the fact that there's a diversity of protocols out there that we need to support. And as from an internet perspective, they're not internet protocols. They're very different protocols. Third point, analytics. From an internet point of view, we talk about bandwidth and utilization and compression factors and how do we do all these digital things. In the Internet of Things, we're talking about pressure, we're talking about volume, we're talking about temperature, we're talking about torque, we're talking about voltage. All those can be analyzed with analytical models, but you have to almost go back to your university class and dust off PV equals nRT, right? The ideal gas equation. We know that this pressure sensor and this temperature sensor have to be in some sort of relationship to each other. And we can't ignore that because we're dealing with physical devices that live in a physical world and they follow the laws of physics. And those really are laws. Those aren't guidelines. Those are laws. The fourth thing that's different in the Internet of Things compared to the Internet are the partners. I look around at many of the operating technology, the OT firms, the Rockwells, the Schneiders, other people that are sponsoring and attending today, and they're all moving up out of the OT space into the IT space. Everything evolves, and that's proper. At the same time, the IT companies are saying, we've done a really good job in the digital world. We've actually survived to bring your own device in the enterprise. Now we need to turn around and start adding all these operational devices to the corporate internet. And what does that really mean? As a CIO, as a chief security officer, what does it mean when I start adding these devices to the network that I've never seen before, that speak protocols that I don't listen to, that turn around and they do physical things, not digital things? So our perspective on the world is that we're not successful with a Pratt & Whitney unless we go and work with somebody who knows about the device. We would suggest that the operating technology vendors will be more successful if they work with an IT firm as well. So that was the first of my 3 points. The Internet of Things is like the Internet, and it's also different from the Internet, and it's different from the Internet in these 4 ways. Let's go on to the second point. So many people today talk about all the use cases in the Internet of Things. We tried to write them down at one point. We got about 50. Let me try to simplify it and make it straightforward. There are inventors and there are operators. As an inventor, I invent something. I make my thing, I build it, I ship it to the market, I watch it perform in my client's environment. I'm looking precisely at something that I built. I know the technology, I know the security, and I'm feeding telemetry back to myself to make sure that that's operating well. And as part of that, one of the things I want to do is try to improve. What do I improve? I improve the product. I look at the telemetry coming back, and I say to myself, gee, I see that I've got a wobble in this vibration sensor. I know based on my experience I've got about 30 days left before that thing has a problem. I check my systems. I know it's under warranty, so it's my responsibility to fix it when it goes wrong. Let me see how I schedule maintenance to take care of that. I improve my product. But I can also innovate at the same time. When I finish with that repair, let's say it's a home appliance. Let's say it's a dishwasher. Let's make a concrete example. I now know from the telemetry that that dishwasher perhaps was owned by a bachelor, and the bachelor felt very good if he or she actually did dishes once a week or something. And at the end of the warranty period, there are only 100 cycles on the dishwasher. This other dishwasher over here was owned by a family of 5 with lots of children. They probably do a load of dishes 5 or 6 times a week. This dishwasher over here has 500 cycles on it. Now, once I've done the successful warranty repair, shouldn't I also kick off to my smarter commerce system the idea that I now have a satisfied customer here who understands the need to have an extended maintenance because they've just had something fixed for them? And oh, by the way, this customer only has 100 cycles on their washer. This customer has 500 cycles on their dishwasher. Which one am I going to be more willing to discount the extended maintenance to? Because I know the failure curve is not a function of how many weeks or months since you bought your device. It's a function of how many loads you've done, how full they've been, how hot the water was that ran through it, because that affects the seals and things. So there's many, many things here that you can innovate in your business model with the IoT. As an operator, I have tremendous amounts of power in my fingertips. Again, I go back to the Rio Tinto videos yesterday. You're looking down at these massive pieces of earth-moving equipment that are moving tons and tons around. Or think of the AGT presentation from this morning where you're looking at container ships and barges and things like that. But how do you use that power? Okay, there we go. As we tried to suggest in our opening video, the Internet of Things is full of data. I've talked to customers who've told me we are streaming tons and tons of data and we're throwing it on the floor because we don't have the capability to listen to all of it, we don't have the capability to analyze all of it, and we certainly don't have the budget to store all of it. So it's important to go through all the different roles and all the different pieces of information and to link together and say, here's some information that's relevant to the pilot, that's relevant to the flight engineer, that's relevant to the flight attendant, and get the right data to the right people at the right time. And if we do this, we can create new value. I've used a container ship example here because of the benefits of being able to put containers on and off, and then to create a new business model, as you might have heard, that there are certain containers that need to be refrigerated and need to be maintained at a certain temperature for their entire journey. Well, you put the sensor on the container, you put the mechanic on the ship, and then the shipping lines can guarantee to the shipper that that container stayed at a certain temperature and a certain range during the entire trip, and the shippers are willing to pay for that. It takes you out of the commodity business of just moving containers from place to place. We've also found at Port of Cartagena, for example, it's very illustrative to go into the dock facilities and say, how can we use the Internet of Things to look at the cranes and all the grain elevators and the conveyor belts that load and unload all these different ships? It turns out that a small amount of improvement in those saves a tremendous amount of money. Now, the third thing that I'm going to talk about today is the importance of a very strong foundation. I assume everybody in the room is going to recognize the picture of the Statue of Liberty, a gift from France to the United States, the first gift from France that I will acknowledge during this presentation. There's a second one coming. But as familiar as you are with the statue, are you familiar with the foundation underneath it? Would Lady Liberty stand as tall and as strong through all the superstorms and hurricanes and things like that over the years if she weren't standing on a solid foundation? I think not. In fact, the foundation is very important. It tends to be buried in the ground and people don't spend a lot of time on it. But if you build a house on a poor foundation, it's like the Bible story of the house built on sand. The first storm comes and the house washes away. So when you're building your IoT applications, if you're not on a firm foundation, when it comes time to scale and put it into production, if you have trouble, you deserve it. But the foundation is not just big blocks. The foundation can be little pieces. So in the AGT presentation this morning, you talked a lot about assembling an IoT API infrastructure. We call that Blue Mix. Many of you have probably heard of it. It's the way we do composable APIs in the cloud. Runs on top of our software infrastructure. You can bring your own APIs. You can buy Cisco's APIs. You can buy IBM's or Pitney Bowes or anybody else's APIs and compose your own applications. Because sometimes you need the big blocks, like the bricks, and sometimes you need something that's a smaller mosaic. And you need to take those little pieces together, put them together into something that's very pleasing and very subtle. And we all know what happens when you're not built on a strong, straight foundation. Now, all of this sounds like a lot of work, and we've kicked off a work group as part of the World Forum to try to work on skills, to get more skills and more talent available. I'd suggest to you, though, that even though you look at the work and you look at the things that need to be done, the riskiest thing to do is to sit where you are. The riskiest thing to do is just to stay with the school of fish that you're swimming around with, thinking there's safety in numbers. Because our competitors are all innovating quickly. Our competitors are all moving quickly around us. So don't just swim with the fish. We have to strike out. We have been striking out. In the last, 10 years, people have been working on IoT things. We have already dug the wagon wheel ruts in the prairie. The pioneers have been there. They've shown us the way. One of the themes of this conference, it's on a big bulletin board down at the entrance and exit where you get the cabs downstairs, is deployment, moving into things now, moving from pretty charts into actual product. So we have to start this journey because there's a whole bunch of people coming after us. Right? You have to get going. It's going to be mobbed, and it's going to be very confused and chaotic like we talked at the beginning. But if you have the right foundation, you can set yourself up for scale. And when you have the right foundation and the right infrastructure, you can handle big scale-ups in your workload. Now, the best time to start was a long time ago. The second best time to start is tomorrow. Stay here today, listen to the rest of the keynote speakers, but the best time to start is right away, okay? Don't defer this. Don't make this part of your 2016 plan or something like that. If you're not already started, you need to get going. If you're already going, you need to go faster. Now, what I've tried to do with you today is I've tried to share our strategic vision. I've tried to say, here's our experience. Here are the three things that we would like to share with you. Right? The Internet of Things is like and unlike the Internet. We see two basic roles. Don't be confused by all the use cases. Think about, I'm a user of things or I'm an operator of things. How do I get that together? And then the importance of a foundation. But frankly, I'm going to end here with a challenge. I'm going to end here with a challenge to myself, and I'm going to invite all of you to take the challenge. Am I just another vendor standing up here in front of a bunch of pretty charts? I have to admit, these are the prettiest charts I've ever had in my entire working career. So all compliments to my graphic artist team. I understand they're watching the live stream in a conference room somewhere. You guys did a hell of a job. Let me be clear that the only thing pretty up here, though, is the charts. It's certainly not the presenter, despite the makeup artist's best efforts in the back room. Is this only a set of pretty charts? Well, here's my challenge. Tomorrow morning at 9:45, we're having a breakout session. And the second gift from France that I will acknowledge is from my friends at Schneider Electric. The Schneider team has loaned us a pump that's actually running in a Schneider facility off-site. We're going to take that pump, we're going to bring it into the IBM IoT Foundation that we announced earlier today. We're going to pump it up, no pun intended, and the controller is set to overcycle the pump every 30 seconds. Our analytics software is going to be watching all that data running in real time. When it sees the overcycle, it's going to kick off the maintenance system that's going to find the right technician with the right training, the right tools, and the right parts, and get them dispatched to go make that fix. At the same time, it's going to feed back to the product engineering system to say, hey, we just took the 500th truck roll on this component. Do you think maybe we could spend another $1 on product cost in the next release? Because that would be a lot cheaper to specify a better component than to roll all these trucks. And then, as I spoke before, there's a smarter commerce component that you can think of as well, that when you have the happy customer, you can then go back and market to them. Now, this is all code. This is all generally available, and it's all running. It's not quite as impressive as the Rio Tinto demonstration, because I don't have lots and lots of trucks running around things. But as we've gone through this list of inventors here, there's one inventor I've left off the list. There's a famous American inventor named Benjamin Franklin, who was the inventor of the stove, among other things. He's a very famous inventor. In fact, he got his face on our money. I invite you to come to our breakout tomorrow. If you think this is all just a bunch of pretty slides and there's not real stuff running in behind, you can have my Franklin. And let me be honest, this is not IBM's money, this is my money, and I do not have my wife's permission to give it to you. Hopefully she's not watching on the live stream. That's how much faith I have in my technical team. So I invite you all to come at 9:45 tomorrow morning and see us illustrate the theme of the conference, taking things from thoughts to actual deployment to actual running. I thank you all very much for listening.